I want you to think about the last time something a creator said stopped you, mid-scroll. I'm not talking about a network anchor or a cable news panel of talking heads. Not somebody in a studio with a graphics package and a talking points document. Just a person filming themselves sitting in a car maybe, or in their bedroom, or wherever they film their stuff. Looking straight into a camera and saying something that landed, and it resonated. Not because it produced well, but because it felt true to you. Because this person had shown up enough times, said enough things that you agreed with, or that you learned from, or maybe you hadn't thought of before. They were honest with you, and the authenticity made you extend something to them that most people in media spend their whole careers trying to earn. You trusted them. That's not nothing. That's actually everything in terms of how media works right now. Legacy networks build trust on institutional authority with things like the anchor desk, the broadcast license, the implication that CBS or NBC or wherever you're watching had vetted what you were about to hear. That was a model that worked for a long time, and then it didn't. Because the institution started showing. It started getting caught and started getting bought. The institution of trusted news started getting forcibly shaped, and the trust reserve started to drain. Which is a story I've told on this show before, and I'll definitely tell it again. It is kind of the bigger point of what and why I started this show. But here's the thing that happened on the other side of that collapse. While the legacy model was burning through its credibility, a different kind of trust was being built. Slower, more fragile, but more real. Built by people who had nothing to back them up except consistency and just straightforward honesty in showing up Tuesday after Tuesday or Monday after Monday with something worth saying. Creators who built audiences not because they had a platform handed to them, but because they earned it one video at a time. That trust is the most valuable thing in media right now. It's more valuable than a primetime slot, more valuable than a network contract, because it's not manufactured. It's not institutional. It lives in the relationship between a person and their audience, and it transfers, it lands. Whatever the creator says, the audience hears in the register of someone they already believe. Now, what would you pay to acquire that kind of authenticity? Turns out there is an answer, and it's $1,500 a post, at minimum. And the people writing those checks have figured out how to make the whole operation behind paying that fee disappear before the audience ever sees the invoice. I'm Darren. This is TrapThink, and today we're going to do a little machine disassembly. On March 6, just last month, 11 days before a Democratic primary in Illinois' 9th congressional district, a crowded, expensive, genuinely competitive race to replace retiring Representative Jan Schakowsky was underway. 15 Democratic candidates on the ballot, multiple frontrunners in this race, dark money already pouring in from multiple directions. One of the most watched primaries in the country for people who follow this stuff. A political influencer in Florida who goes by the name Amanda informed all of this process online. She declines to give her real name, and she gets an email. The email comes from a man named Matt Anthes. He's the founder of a digital marketing firm called Advocators. Advocators is described on their own website as focused on politics and advocacy through micro-influencers. The email contains an offer. Create one negative post about a candidate named Kat Abughazaleh and post it on Instagram and TikTok. Advocators will pay you $1,500. And it came with a briefing document. Now, before I get into what the brief said, I want to orient you on who Kat Abughazaleh actually is. I want to try to be precise about it because I think that the framing of this story matters. Kat Abughazaleh is 26 years old. She's a former video producer at Media Matters, which is a left-leaning media watchdog. She built a TikTok following of nearly 300,000 people before she ever announced a campaign. She was tear-gassed at an ICE protest in Broadview, Illinois last September. Kat was federally indicted in October alongside 5 other progressive activists and candidates. They became known as the Broadview Six, and they were indicted for allegedly impeding a federal officer's vehicle during that protest. She called it political prosecution. Her trial is set for May 26th. She is, in other words, not a moderate. She is not a Democrat establishment pick. She is a progressive, digital native candidate who built her entire campaign on reach and authenticity. on being exactly the kind of creator-turned-candidate that the independent media ecosystem was built to produce. And the operation that went after her was not funded by Republicans. I mean, that's kind of a bigger deal, because it reframes everything that comes after. The dark money that paid to run a coordinated influence operation against Kat Abughazaleh, that was deployed through progressive influencers and aimed at a progressive primary electorate. That came from somewhere inside the same political ecosystem that she was running in, the same side of the aisle. Establishment Democrat money, possibly AIPAC adjacent based on what we know about where dark money flowed in that race, and possibly other interests as well. The funders are still unnamed, and it'll probably stay that way. But the operation wasn't left attacking right. It was the machine eating one of its own. And it used the independent progressive creator economy, the thing that's supposed to be the antidote to institutional media, as the weapon. That's an important piece to remember, because the architecture of this operation is the story, and the architecture only gets more uncomfortable the closer you look at it. Now back to Amanda. She read the brief that was included in the pitch to slander Kat Abughazaleh. She told a reporter at MS Now who would eventually break the story. That reporter is Brandy Zadrozny. Amanda said that the money didn't feel right, not because $1,500 is a lot. It's not a lot, especially for a sponsored post. She said it didn't feel right because the offer was coming from someone who wouldn't say where the money was coming from. And that bothered her enough to forward the whole thing on to a journalist instead of cashing the check.
Now, MS Now has exclusive reporting that finds that one dark money group is offering to pay influencers $1,500 from an undisclosed source to post content attacking one of the top Democratic candidates. Brandy Zadrozny broke this story. She's a senior enterprise reporter for MS Now, and she joins me now. All right. So walk me through what you found.
Okay. So a couple nights ago, this influencer with about 100,000 followers. They call her micro-influencers, right? There's tons of people like this. She gets an email from this guy, Matt Anthes, and he works at this company called Advocators. And so he says, hey, you want to be in part of this campaign? I'm going to give you $1,500. All you have to do is post one post on TikTok and Instagram, and the post has to be basically trashing Abughazaleh. And he said that the company was called Democracy Unmuted. Now,
can we show the website?
Oh, it's a great website.
This is Democracy. Now, again, Democracy Unmuted is the source of the funds being channeled through this guy that's going out to pay influencers to not endorse a candidate, but to use talking points to attack one of the three candidates from an unknown source. Democracy Unmuted has a Illinois voter awareness campaign.
Yeah, and the website is it started 2 weeks ago. It's got like some big words, and it says democracy, fight, things like that. And then it's a crap website.
Right.
It's got a jot form at the bottom that goes to nowhere. I filled it out, and it's like, thank you, and then nothing. It doesn't go to your email. I don't know what they did with my email now. I'm probably on a list. But so it's a crap website. And so she says no, but we checked it out, and we did some searching, and it seems like some other influencers ended up taking that money.
That's Brandy Zadrozny at MS Now talking to Chris Hayes. Her reporting broke this story on March 13th, 2026. 4 days before the primary. What she found when she started pulling at the thread is a window into something most people have suspected exists, but rarely get to see it documented this clearly. A shell organization called Democracy Unmuted. Website registered 2 weeks before the offer was sent. No FEC filings, no named leadership, no listed address. A homepage full of civic-sounding language. Protect democracy, stand up, speak out. Over stock images of protesters. A sign-up form that triggered no response when it was filled out. Matt Anthes told Zadrozny that Democracy Unmuted was made up of, and I'm repeating this from the report, individuals from the Illinois area who have served at the highest offices and been at the top of their game in the media. He declined to name any of those individuals. He said his firm doesn't disclose client identities and that all their dealings are, and this is the part that should stop you, fully compliant with FEC rules and regulations. He's almost certainly right about that last part, which is kind of the whole problem. Okay, so let me build the architecture for you, because the structure of this operation is more important than the Illinois race it ran in. Okay, you got 4 layers. 4 distinct tiers between the money and the message. Each one of these layers provides just enough separation from the next so that nobody can draw a straight line from the funders to the content. So here, let's walk through them one at a time, because the craft of what's here is actually remarkable. Whoever designed this knew exactly what they were doing. Okay, layer 1, the funders, invisible, unnamed, protected by dark money rules that allow political spending to flow through organizations without public disclosure of who's writing the checks. We don't know who they are. Based on reporting, the race in Illinois' 9th drew millions from AIPAC-backed committees and other outside groups, all flowing against the most progressive candidates. But we can't draw a through line from any named funder to Democracy Unmuted. Coincidence? Of course not. The structure is specifically designed to prevent us from drawing that line. The funders are the only people in this whole operation who get to stay completely invisible, and that invisibility is the foundation everything else is built on. Okay, so layer 2, Democracy Unmuted, the shell, the named entity that technically exists, technically filed nothing with the FEC, technically did nothing illegal. The website that looks like a civic organization until you try to find out anything real about it. The entity whose entire purpose is to provide just enough surface area, a name, a homepage, a paragraph of mission language, for the operation to have an identity without having accountability. Democracy Unmuted is not a media organization. It's not a campaign. It's a label on a bottle without an ingredients list. Okay, next, layer 3, Advocators, Matt Anthis' firm. This is where the actual logistics live, recruiting creators, sending the briefs, negotiating rates, managing the relationships. Advocators creates the operational separation between the shell and the content. If you're trying to trace the money, you hit Advocators and stop, because Advocators doesn't disclose its clients and isn't required to. The agency is the moat. Finally, layer 4. A sub-agency called Upstart Factory, mentioned in the compliance language of the offer. Another layer, another degree of separation, another wall between whoever wrote the check and whoever posted the content. And then at the bottom, at the actual point of contact with the audience, the creators. The people talking to the selfie camera on their phone and then uploading it to whatever platform got them hundreds of thousands of followers. And let's face it, a lot of these creators know exactly what they're participating in. But some of these people have received the brief and the money and posted the content without fully understanding the chain above them. Some of whom, like one creator we'll get into in a minute, appear to have recited the brief almost verbatim and then deleted the video and denied any payment when the story broke. So there it is, 4 layers. 0 public disclosure required at any of them. Completely legal under FEC rules that were written for a media environment that doesn't really exist anymore. Now here's what the architecture is actually designed to produce. The audience watching any one of these creator videos experiences something that feels like organic political opinion. A real person they follow who has never seemed like a paid spokesperson talking about a candidate in their own voice, with their own energy, their own mannerisms, their own credibility built up through years of consistent content. The civic language from the brief gets translated through the creator's personality. It doesn't sound like an ad. It sounds like their own take on the situation. The audience can't see the brief. They can't see advocators. They can't see Democracy Unmuted. They can't see the funders. They see a creator they trust saying something that sounds like that creator's genuine opinion. That's not an accident. That is the product. That's the design. The machine isn't manufacturing content. It's manufacturing trust, borrowing it, technically renting the credibility that the creator built honestly over time and deploying it for a purpose the audience never consented to and never knew about. I want to spend some time on a specific creator, a Missouri-based political influencer who goes by the name The Woke Ginger on Instagram and TikTok. His real name is Justin Krailman. He posts about progressive politics. He has a combined audience of roughly 1 million followers across platforms. He wears a white hat that says woke on the front, which, depending on how you read it, is either a reclamation of the term or a very deliberate piece of audience signaling. Maybe it's both. But hey, he's built something real here, a voice, a following, a relationship with the people who believe that what he says reflects what he actually thinks. And in the days before the Illinois primary, the woke ginger posted a video about Kat Abughazaleh. Which, look, I'm going to acknowledge up front that Abughazaleh is not a name most people have practice saying. I had to YouTube it a few times myself to get it right. But here's the thing. If you're making a video that targets someone specifically, a video that's designed to damage their campaign, you think you might take 30 seconds to figure out how to say the name of the person you're talking about. The mispronunciation isn't a moral failing, but it certainly is a tell. It's the kind of detail that happens when you're reading from something that someone else wrote rather than talking about something you've actually given some thought to. He told his followers it was important to, and these are almost his exact words, look past viral personalities and ask who is running and why. He described Abughazaleh as inexperienced, from a wealthy family, possibly not even living in that district. Her campaign, he said, was designed for attention rather than impact. Those phrases, look past viral personalities, ask who is running and why, are nearly verbatim from the Democracy Unmuted brief. Not similar, not thematically aligned, damn near the same words.
Your vote in the primary on March 17th will determine who represents you in Congress. And get this, there are 16 candidates running to replace Jan Schakowsky at the end of her term as she retires. So it's important to look past viral personalities and ask who is running and why.
So look past viral personalities, ask who is running and why is from the memo,
yes.
right? That, like, I think
word for word.
That's word for word.
Yeah.
Okay. We should note the woke ginger just posted something saying that we have a message from the woke ginger saying that he's taking it down. It didn't meet his standards. Yes. He does not say that he was paid for this, but you can draw your own conclusions.
Yeah, I mean, I reached out to him yesterday after I saw it. I grabbed the video first from his page and then reached out to him and said, is this a video where you paid for it? And then he took it down immediately and said, has a sorry message. He apologized to candidate Abughazaleh. And he said, it did not meet my standards. When I asked if he was paid, he said, I was not paid. And I said, wait, were you not offered money or were you not paid? And then he just didn't want to talk to me anymore. But he seems like a nice fellow with 1 million followers doing his thing.
When the story broke, Krailman said that he was not paid for the video. Then he deleted it. I'm not going to call him a liar. I couldn't possibly know whether he was paid or whether he received the brief through some other channel or whether he posted the content that happened to mirror the brief because he'd absorbed the talking points from somewhere else in his media environment. All of those are possible, I guess. The last one, though, absorbing framing without knowing where it originated, is actually the most interesting possibility. And I'm going to come back to it. But here's what's true regardless of whether Krailman specifically was paid or not. The brief existed. The offer was sent to multiple creators. Some were explicitly offered $1,500 per post. At least one accepted the offer because the evidence for that is the existence of multiple videos tracking the brief's language, posted by different accounts in the days before the primary. Ta-da! The machine ran. The content went out, the audience received it. Krailman may or may not have been a paid instrument, but he was an instrument, whether he knew it or not. And that's the thing about this system that makes it genuinely frightening. Not just the paid creator's version of it, but the ambient version. The brief circulates, the talking points spread. Some creators get paid to post them, others absorb the framing organically, and post their own version genuinely believing it's their own thinking. Because by the time the brief reaches them, it's been processed through enough layers and repeated by enough accounts that it feels like the ambient political conversation rather than someone else's paid advertising. The machine runs even on the people who aren't being paid by it. That's not a side effect. That's a feature. Paid seeding creates organic spread. The initial investment, $1,500 or whatever the total budget was, generates a multiplier effect as the framing diffuses through the broader creator ecosystem. You pay 5 creators, those 5 posts shape the conversational environment. 20 more creators pick up the framing because it feels like what people are saying. The talking points become the water everyone's swimming in, and nobody downstream has any idea where the current started. This is tribal capture in practice. Let me walk you through the brief, not word for word. I'm going to give you the architecture, because the architecture is where the craft is. The framing document that Democracy Unmuted gave to creators described its objective as civic engagement. It wanted influencers to engage voters and encourage them to look past viral personalities and ask real questions about who is running and why. That's the wrapper. That's the language that makes the whole thing sound like a public interest work. Civic, neutral, concerned about the integrity of the democratic process. If you read that line without context, you think it's a voter education initiative. But the brief was not about civic engagement. It was about one candidate, Kat Abughazaleh, and every single talking point in it was designed to damage her specifically. She's inexperienced. She comes from a wealthy family. She may live with her partner in a neighborhood outside the district. She's too new to the area to actually understand it. Her campaign is, and this is a specific line, designed for attention rather than impact. Notice what that last line does. Abughazaleh built her entire campaign on digital reach. She had nearly 300,000 TikTok followers before she announced. Her campaign strategy was explicitly built around social media, around creator-style content, around the same kind of direct-to-audience communication that the independent media ecosystem is built on. That's her genuine strength, her actual innovation. And the brief, which was being delivered by digital creators to digital audiences through digital platforms, took that strength and reframed it as inauthenticity, designed for attention rather than impact. It weaponized the creator model against the creator candidate, using creators as the delivery system. Well, it's deeply ironic or intentional with razor precision. My money is on intentional precision. Here's what's happening at the persuasion level, and I want to be specific about this. The brief is doing something sophisticated. It doesn't manufacture skepticism about politicians. That skepticism already exists in the audience. It doesn't invent concern about authenticity. That concern is real and legitimate. What the brief does is find those pre-existing feelings, validate them, and then channel them toward a predetermined conclusion. It paces the audience's actual emotional state, their genuine frustration with performative politics, their genuine desire for candidates who understand their communities. And then it leads them from that real emotional place towards a specific argument. You start where the listener already is. You meet them there. You speak their language. And then you take them somewhere they didn't decide to go. The civic wrapper makes it feel like the guide is trustworthy. Engage voters. Ask real questions. Look past viral personalities. Those are things a concerned citizen would say. Those are things the audience already believes. So when the creator says them, there's no friction. It just sounds like someone's articulating what you're already thinking. Flip it around, though. The operation asking you to look past viral personality is paying viral personalities to deliver its message. The operation claiming to want you to ask real questions won't disclose who's funding it. The operation asking you to engage is specifically designed to prevent you from engaging with the actual mechanisms of what you're watching. The brief is the trap, the creator is the spring, and the audience is the target. Here's where we have to talk about the law, or more precisely, the absence of it. The Federal Election Commission does not require political influencers to disclose when they're being paid to promote political candidates or causes. That's not a gray area. That's not a loophole someone found through clever lawyering. It's a gap. The FEC's disclosure requirements were built for a media landscape that doesn't exist anymore. Television advertising, direct mail, digital ads purchased through formal ad networks with traceable money trails. The framework was designed for mass broadcast, not for a one-to-one feeling communication channel where a single person with a camera and an audience can reach 1 million people who believe they're getting that person's genuine, unfiltered opinion. The FEC never thought about the creator economy, and the creator economy has grown up inside that regulatory blind spot. Here's the contrast that should make you uncomfortable. Commercial influencers, beauty creators, fitness creators, lifestyle creators, are required by the FTC to disclose when they're being paid to talk about a product. If a skincare creator gets $500 to mention a moisturizer, they have to say they're paid. That rule exists. It's enforced. It works reasonably well. You've seen the ad or sponsored tag at the top of creator posts. That disclosure exists because regulators looked at the commercial influencer ecosystem and said, Audiences have a right to know when they're watching an advertisement disguised as a recommendation. Political influencers have no equivalent protection. None. A creator can accept an offer from a dark money shell organization, post content by that organization, tell their audience it's their personal opinion, and break no law. Zero. The disclosure requirement that protects you from being manipulated by a skincare ad does not protect you from being manipulated by a political operation that has spent months building the appearance of an organic grassroots concern. Matt Anthes told Brandy Zadrozny that Democracy Unmuted's operation was fully compliant with FEC rules and regulations. He's almost certainly right, which is not a defense. It's an indictment of the rules. Now here's the implication that doesn't get discussed enough. Dark money groups don't just use the gap to run operations against candidates. The same infrastructure, the same playbook, the same 4-layer architecture, the same brief-to-creator pipeline can be deployed for any political goal, any issue, any narrative frame you want to install in a target audience. You want to build the appearance of grassroots opposition to a piece of legislation? You want to create the feeling that ordinary people are concerned about something you need them to be concerned about for your interests? The playbook is the same. Find the creators with the right audience demographics, send the brief, pay the rate, watch the content go out with no disclosure requirement, no FEC filing, no paper trail connecting the money to the message. Then here's the thing that's starting to happen on the other side of this, which should disturb you equally. Democratic political strategists have started talking openly about creators demanding thousands of dollars for positive posts and threatening to go negative on candidates who don't pay. That's not journalism. That's not advocacy. That's a protection racket built on the same structural gap. The absence of a disclosure requirement doesn't protect speech. It protects whoever is paying to manufacture what looks like speech. Those are not the same thing. The hole isn't closing. Nobody with the power to close it has an incentive to close it. And while it stays open, the machine runs. I want to be as honest as I can about the scope here, because I think it's easy to hear this story and minimize it. One shady operation in one congressional primary, probably establishment money protecting an incumbent-style candidate from a progressive challenger. Small market. Got caught. Story over. See, that's the wrong read. What you just watched was a proof of concept. What Democracy Unmuted demonstrated, clumsily and visibly in a way that got exposed because one influencer had the integrity to blow it up, is that the influencer as a political weapon infrastructure works. The brief circulates. The talking points get deployed. The audience doesn't know. The creators maintain plausible deniability. The funders stay invisible. The FEC sees nothing reportable. The platforms have no requirement to intervene. The operation runs, and absent someone like Amanda making the right call, nobody ever knows it happened. And this story didn't blow up anywhere. You had to dig for it to find it. The reason that this one got caught even as much as it did was that it was sloppy. A website registered 2 weeks before the offer was sent. No FEC filings at all. A brief specific enough to be recognizable when a creator read it nearly verbatim on camera. An influencer who made the right call and went to a reporter instead of cashing the check. A more sophisticated version of this, and sophisticated versions are not hypothetical, they're inevitable, would be nearly invisible. A more established front organization, an older website, a cleaner brief. More experienced creators who know how to absorb talking points and express them in their own voice so nothing sounds like a script. More careful rate negotiations so the money trail is harder to follow. That version of this operation leaves nothing for a reporter to find. The content looks completely organic. The audience has no way to know. That version is already running. Not, it might be running. It is absolutely 100% running right now. For candidates, against candidates, on issues, around legislations, in races nobody's paying attention to. The proof of concept is solid. The infrastructure exists. The legal protection is in place. The platforms don't require disclosure. The FEC doesn't reach it. And the only reason we know about Democracy Unmuted is that it made rookie mistakes that a second-generation operation won't make. The sophistication level will increase. It always does. Now think about what that means for how you process political content from creators that you actually trust. Not creators that you barely know, creators you've followed for years, creators who've built something real, who have shown up consistently, who have been right enough times and honest enough times that you extend them a level of credibility you wouldn't give a cable news anchor. Those creators are the most valuable targets. A creator with 5 years of accumulated audience trust is worth orders of magnitude more to this operation than a new account you never heard of. Their credibility is the asset being rented. Whatever they say, their audience hears in a register that's already been pre-authorized by years of relationship. The trust transfers to the content. The trust transfers to the conclusion. And the audience never sees the mechanism behind it. That's not the creator's fault necessarily. They may not even know the brief that they received originated the way it did. They may have absorbed the framing so far upstream that it genuinely feels like their own thinking by the time it comes out of their mouth. But the machine doesn't require them to know. It just requires them to post. There's one more player in this architecture I haven't named yet, and it's the one with the most power to change it. Not the FEC, not Congress, the platforms. Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. They all know what's happening. Not in every specific case. Nobody can monitor every piece of content that platforms with hundreds of millions of daily uploads for undisclosed political censorship, but they know the ecosystem. They know the agencies. They've seen the patterns. They've had the technical infrastructure, advertiser transparency tools, payment relationships surfacing, coordinated behavior detection to create meaningful friction between dark money and organic seeming content. They built those tools for commercial advertising. They choose not to extend them to political influence operations of this kind. And I want to be fair here, because this isn't entirely a cynical story. The platforms have made real investments in election integrity, foreign interference removal, state-sponsored media labeling, systems for flagging and removing coordinated inauthentic behavior, bot networks, fake accounts, foreign governments pushing narratives through fabricated profiles. That work is real and it matters, especially in an era where foreign interference in domestic elections is a documented ongoing concern. But there's a specific category of domestic political influence, paid creator content without disclosure, native to the platforms, using the platform's own ecosystem as the delivery mechanism, where the platforms have essentially decided that the problem is not theirs to solve. And I want to be specific about why. Because the reason isn't ignorance. Political content drives engagement. Engagement drives time on the platform. Time on the platform drives advertising revenue. An ecosystem where political actors are paying creators to generate high engagement content about elections is, from a pure platform economic standpoint, a feature. The platform captures the engagement regardless of whether the creator disclosed the sponsorship. The disclosure question is an externality. It doesn't affect the platform's revenue model. It affects the audience, which is not the same constituency. There's no financial incentive for the platforms to build a disclosure infrastructure that would disrupt this. There's no regulatory requirement that forces them to. There's no reputational cost significant enough to move the calculus. And here's the closed loop that makes this structurally permanent unless something dramatic happens. The political actors who would need to pass the legislation to create a disclosure requirement are the same political actors who are using the system. On both sides. Nobody with their hand in the pot is going to legislate that pot away. So the hole stays open, the machine keeps running, and the audience keeps trusting the creators who may or may not know they're functioning as nodes in a network that exists specifically to manufacture that trust and deploy it for purposes the audience never agreed to. Basically, you're being handled. Nobody's going to change it, and this is about showing you how. Kat Abughazaleh lost the Illinois 9th primary on March 17th. She came in second to Evanston Mayor Daniel Biss. She's still fighting federal charges from the Broadview ICE protests. Trial starts May 26th. Whether those charges are a legitimate prosecution or a political weapon is a separate question, one the judge assigned to the case has already signaled skepticism about, calling the Fed's narrative of the protests unreliable. But that's a different episode. I don't really care about that right now. Did the Democracy Unmuted operation change the outcome of the primary? Genuinely unknown. The margin, the timing, the number of creators who actually posted, the reach those posts achieved against the organic content environment. You'd need a baseline that doesn't really exist to measure it. Maybe it moved votes. Maybe the race was already decided on other factors and the influence operation was just noise that got noticed because it was sloppy. We don't know, and that's partly the point. One of the built-in features of this kind of operation is that its effectiveness is structurally difficult to measure, which means it's also structurally difficult to hold accountable. If you can't prove it changed the outcome, it's hard to argue it was consequential. If it's hard to argue that it's consequential, then it's hard to build a political will for regulation. So if regulation doesn't come, the infrastructure stays intact, the next operation runs cleaner, and so on and so forth. Time to bring some Bible into this. Matthew chapter 7, verse 15. Watch out for false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ferocious wolves. The brief said, engage voters. Look past viral personalities. Ask real questions about who is running and why. A dark money organization with no disclosed funders. A website registered 2 weeks before it needed to be used. A 4-layer architecture designed to make the money invisible, asking you to look past viral personalities and ask real questions.
The law still hasn't caught up to our culture or technology. This is basically a way to work around political dark money or independent expenditures. Basically untraceable amounts of money that are used to sway our elections. I can't disclose the funders behind it, but I'll tell you this. I am a big Democrat, and the funders are people you would appreciate and be proud of. Maybe you can read between the lines here. Individuals from the Illinois area who have served in the highest offices and been at the top of their game in the media. First off, weird. But also, if you're so proud of them, say their names. But the good news is this time, this shell pack was sloppy. I mean, first off, you're gonna target a journalist that covers the far right and conspiracy theories and not expect me to find out? But they also can't even spell my name right. Just truly sloppy work.
That was Kat Abughazaleh herself talking about the entire thing after the fact. The sheep's clothing is impeccably tailored. The civic language is genuinely well written, and the people who received the message through the creators who posted it had no way to see the wolf underneath, because the wolf was 6 layers up the chain and entirely invisible. So here's what I want you to take from this. Not paranoia, not reflexive distrust of every creator you follow, because most of them are exactly the way they appear to be. People who built something real and are trying to keep it honest, just like me. People who would read the offer and do what Amanda did, feel the wrongness of it and refuse. What I want you to take is calibration, a specific, usable, portable habit of attention. When a creator you follow produces political content that feels slightly off, when their talking points are a little too clean, when the language feels slightly foreign to their normal voice, when the argument tracks beats you've been seeing across multiple unconnected accounts, that feeling is information. It's not proof of anything. It doesn't mean that the creator is compromised, but it is worth pausing on. It's worth asking, does this feel like the person's actual thinking? Or does this feel like something that was handed to them? That question will not always have an answer. Most of the time, it will just be a creator who happens to agree with something that you've been seeing elsewhere. But the habit of asking is the beginning of not being the target. Pattern recognition is the only defense the audience has in an environment where the disclosure requirement doesn't exist. The platforms aren't incentivized to help you, and the operations will keep getting more sophisticated. You know what the brief looks like now. You know what the architecture looks like. You know that the civic language is the wrapper, that the creator is the delivery mechanism, that the audience's existing trust is the fuel, and that the invoice never shows up anywhere public. That's a real tool. Use it. And if you're a creator, if you've built an audience that trusts you and you've done it honestly, the brief is going to find you. Maybe it already has in some form. Maybe it comes as a direct offer. Maybe it comes as a set of talking points that feel, by the time they reach you, like the ambient political conversation rather than a purchased message. Either way, it's coming. What Amanda did, reading the offer, feeling the wrongness of it, and going to a reporter instead of cashing the check, that's the move. That's exactly the move. The supply chain breaks at the point where someone decides that the trust that they've built with their audience is worth more to them than $1,500. The machine is not going to stop running because we've talked about it today. The infrastructure is legal. The money is invisible. The creators are plentiful. The platforms are incentivized to look away. The FEC doesn't have rules that reach that. The sophistication level will increase because that's what happens. Every operation that gets caught makes the next one harder to catch. The next Democracy Unmuted will register its website a year in advance. It will work with creators who know how to translate a brief without reading it on camera. It'll run cleaner, quieter, and leave less for a reporter to find. But here's what the machine doesn't want you to have. You've been inside it now. You know the 4 layers. You know the civic wrapper. You know the gap in the FEC rules. You know what it looks like when a creator's voice goes slightly foreign, when the register shifts, when the talking points land too clean, when the argument tracks a pattern you've been seeing across accounts that have no obvious reason to be saying the exact same thing. That's pattern recognition, and pattern recognition is contagious. When you learn to see the mechanism, you start seeing it in places you weren't looking. And when you start talking about it with your own audience, your own network, the people who trust you, the mechanism loses some of its power. Not all of it. The operation keeps running. But the audience gets a little harder to reach. That's a real defense. Not a perfect one, but real. Think deeper. Stay free. I'm Darren, and I'll talk to you later this week on Trap Check.